Hello, my name is Leslie Harris, and I serve as the Interim Director of TRIO Student Support Services here on the Statesboro campus. And you may have heard, this week we are celebrating National First Gen Celebration Week and are honoring first generation college students, graduates, and professionals. A first generation college student is someone whose parents did not receive a 4-year bachelor's degree. This week, we hosted a True Blue Table Talk with first-generation members of the Georgia Southern community. Check it out in this video. So, hello everyone, and welcome to the True Blue Table Talk First Gen panel. My name is Leslie Harris, and I serve as the Interim Director of TRIO Student Support Services on the Statesboro campus. And it is my pleasure to welcome you all to our discussion today. Our discussion today is a part of our National First Gen Celebration Week celebrations. National First Gen Celebration Day is on November 8th and is in honor of the signing of the 1965 Higher Education Act. This year marks 55 years since the signing, and institutions nationwide are celebrating the achievements of first generation students, graduates, and professionals. The TRIO programs of Georgia Southern have some fun ways to involve our first generation faculty, staff, and students this week, including our panel. Our panelists today are first generation staff and students, and they have agreed to share some of their story with us. When choosing our panelists, we wanted to showcase how being first generation has looked over the years. As staff members, many times we interact with students who feel like we just don't understand what it means to be a student. So, with today's discussion, we wanted to highlight the differences, but also the similarities of being first gen across different generations. And so, without further ado, I'll introduce to you our panelists for today. So, representing the baby boomer generation, we have Ms. Carol Cox. She serves as the Director of Fiscal Operations in the Office of Research. Next, we have a fellow millennial, Dr. Tawan Wilson, Associate Vice President of Inclusive Excellence and Chief Diversity Officer. And finally, we have our student representing Generation Z, Ms. Karen Morales, Senior Business Management major. And so with that, we will jump into our first set of questions for this afternoon. So to my panelists, can you all please share with us some more about yourselves, including any personal and professional achievements, and how your journey has brought you to Georgia Southern? And so for this question, we'll start with Carol, go to Dr. Wilson, and then end with Karen. And so, Carol.
Thank you. And thank you for inviting me to sit in on your panel today. I appreciate it so much. I made my way to Georgia Southern University a little over 8 years ago. I came from a private higher ed institution, but prior to that had been in the private sector. So really for the last about 15 years, I have worked in higher ed and made my way to Georgia Southern 8 years ago. So I was went to college, private sector, and then higher ed.
I'll jump in there. So thank you, Leslie, for the opportunity to engage. I really appreciate it. So again, my name is Tawan Wilson. I serve as the Associate Vice President for Inclusive Excellence and Chief Diversity Officer here at Georgia Southern University. I've been in this role now for 8 months. I grew up in South Arkansas in a really small town of about 1,200 people. At that time, as the youngest of 3 children, education has absolutely transformed my life in just the most amazing ways. I am the very proud product of federal TRIO programs, which I know we'll talk a little bit more about that, but just so pleased to be here. I've been in higher education as an administrator for the last 14 years. I came to you all from the University of Iowa, where I served as the Associate Vice President for Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion and Chief Diversity Officer. Prior to my time at Iowa, I served on the faculty at the Medical University of South Carolina and as their Executive Director of Student Life and Diversity. And before that, I actually spent 6 years at Missouri State University as their Executive Director of Multicultural Student Retention and Federal TRIO programs, and several more institutions before that, but I'll stop with that.
My name is Karen Morales. I'm currently a senior. I transferred from the Savannah campus. The reason that I decided to go to Georgia Southern because it was closer to my mother and my family, and I wanted to go to a college that was big and diverse, but still close. So I picked that. I'm happy that I was allowed to transfer from trio program to trio program, and yeah, that's my story.
Thank you all for those lovely introductions. So our next question is, being a first generation college student, what motivated you to attend college? And were you aware of this part of your identity before entering college? And we can go in whatever order you all want.
So I'm happy to jump in there. My motivation to attend college was really this desire to be more and to have more. I had amazing parents who really pushed me and said to me, "You're going to go to college, and we want you to have a better life than we had." And so it was really never a major question as to whether or not I was going, more so a question of how I was going to get there, how we were going to pay for it, things of that nature. But yeah, I was absolutely aware of my identity as a first generation college student in advance. Like I said, I was in trio. I had a large part to do with the fact of being first generation and low income. And so I was keenly aware of that as early as fifth grade, actually, when I started as a participant in educational talent search. And then I continued as an upper bound student, and then eventually trio student support services and McNair. And so kind of moved through each of those spaces and definitely was aware for sure.
I also had amazing parents that said, "You're going to go to college because I want better for you and you should want better for yourself." I also was a low income individual, and I I was aware. I was aware, and I was proud to like go to college and have the resources that I did because in high school they had a trio program type of thing, and it helped me a lot. My parents didn't have the background to help me, but my school did. So I've always had somebody to push me towards all of my experiences, and yeah.
So I guess this is a big difference in you guys' generation and the baby boomers. My parents grew up in the Depression, so for them, if you've had a grandparent or a great grandparent who's a Depression era person, you know it's a different mindset. It's almost more about survival. But so our parents certainly didn't discourage us. It just wasn't in necessarily going to college wasn't necessarily in the mindset. My sister is 2.5 years older than I, and she's watching this afternoon, so she's already sending me comments, being the big sister. So hi, sissy. But she really pioneered the possibility of college. Because she, at very, very early age, decided I want to be an attorney. I'm going to go to college. I don't know how to do it. And even had to overcome her high school counselor telling her she should really do something else, you know. But she persevered. So, you know, for that reason, I didn't necessarily think about myself as first generation. She was really the first generation. And so, and I will be honest and tell you that I never heard the phrase first generation college student until 8 years ago when I arrived here. Now, maybe when I was in college and struggling along, maybe it was there and I wasn't listening and I didn't hear, but I had never heard that phrase. So so that's my first gen experience, if you will.
Thank you all for that. A common theme between you all is this theme of family, right? And I think a lot of times with first gen students, the family is a huge part of our lives, right? So be it either your parents or, like Carol mentioned, having that support of your sister. Family is important. So thank you all for that. Our next question is, what obstacles have you all faced in your journey, specifically in relation to being first gen and in college? How did you overcome them? And at any point, have you ever felt ashamed about being first gen?
Okay, so I'll lead off this time. I guess the obstacle I had to overcome was maybe not so much first gen oriented as it was, but in high school I was an honor student. I was an honor student in college, but there's a very big difference between high school and college, and so that was a big adjustment for me. And I will say, though, indirectly related to being first gen, is that, and I don't know if any of you guys have experienced it, but you go away to college, you get a good job, you work your way, and some of the folks that I grew up with who didn't do that for whatever reason, sometimes would tell me I got above my raising. So I don't know if anybody else ever experienced that before, but I did. Certainly my parents never told me that because they were very encouraging, but I have had people say that to me.
Karen, would you like to go next?
Yes, I will. So I think one of my biggest obstacles is I was always scared to ask questions. So if it was never told to me, like through workshops and stuff, I never felt like I was supposed to ask. So I was always quiet, and I felt like I lost a lot of opportunities that way. So when I joined Trio, they pretty much have workshops. So if you're scared, you just show up, you can sit in the back and you learn. You know what I'm saying? You take those notes and then you put it to the test. And I think that was my biggest obstacle, being scared and never asking questions.
Absolutely. And I resonate with that for sure, Karen. I think for me, I think about the cost associated with attending college was this huge barrier. I went to a private institution in Arkansas that was probably the second most expensive institution in the state. And so I stressed out a lot and thought that there was this really unusual burden that I was placing on my family. And so really identifying financial opportunities, scholarships, financial aid was a huge deal for me. And I'm sure we'll talk a bit more about that. But then also I felt like I lacked the social and the cultural capital to navigate this private institution where there were not a lot of students who looked like me or shared my identity as a first generation student. And then there was also this notion of imposter syndrome that was coupled with that, which of course is this notion that perhaps I don't belong here, or I'm not good enough, or at any moment someone's going to find out that I'm not as smart as they think I may be as I navigate college. My freshman year, I was a chemistry and biology double major for my first 2 years of college before switching my major to political science. But I remember distinctively walking into a class and someone saying to me, "How's the football team going to be this year?" Or, "What's your position on the football team?" Or whatever, right? And so there was this automatic assumption that I was only at this institution because I must have been an athlete and not that I was there on an academic scholarship. And so that was very, very real for me. I overcame these challenges by connecting with my Trio Student Support Services program at my undergrad institution and identifying allies all across the campus who looked out for me, who supported me when I didn't have sense enough to support myself through some of those moments. I was never really ashamed of being a first generation college student. I will say that there were definitely moments when, again, going back to that imposter syndrome, when I didn't know if I belonged, but it didn't come from a place of shame. It just came from this place of, will I be able to navigate successfully, if that makes sense? So, yeah.
Thank you all. I think, so one, being first gen myself, I resonated a lot with some of the things you all brought up, and then working in Trio and working with first gen students. These are some of the conversations that I know I have with some of my students. And so thank you all again for sharing your stories. Our next question is, did you work in college? And if so, how did you balance working and going to classes and any type of organizations you were involved in? So how did you balance it all?
I did work in college, except my freshman year. I got to relax. But I worked on campus jobs, and I think that was key because they helped you with time management. If you didn't already know it, they would only give you part-time jobs because they understood that you were a student. And if you ever needed to call off because there was a pop quiz that you needed to study for or an exam, they would allow you to do it. But I think time management was always key. Always do your work first and then go to work.
I did work in college as well. I had college work study, and unlike now, I worked, but I never saw a paycheck. So my paycheck went to pay my tuition bill. And so my last quarter in college, I was working and I had paid my tuition and I actually got a paycheck. And that was the first one that I ever saw the entire time I was there. And when it showed up in my campus mailbox, I didn't know what it was because I'd never seen one. But I also had a job off campus. I went to a private university and we had classes Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday. So we have what we call Wonderful Wednesday, which was a day for study, but it was also a day for some of us who needed to have the second job to be able also to work. So I usually worked on Wednesday off campus and then worked my on campus job on class days.
Yeah, and I absolutely worked. So I started as a work study student in the library my freshman year. And then I became a tutor for the America Reads and the America Counts program. I also tutored athletes as well. I was a paraprofessional for an elementary school and did that for a while. I also worked my summers with Upward Bound as a counselor, a residential counselor. So I would live on campus with the students who were actively participating in Upward Bound Summer Academy. And did lots of other odd and end things in between just to pull ends together because I was living off campus in an apartment and had a car payment and all the things. And so work was absolutely necessary. I struck a balance I'm a planner and always have been. And so I would create a schedule of the day and I would really stick to that schedule. So I had time to be in class, time to work, time to study. I scheduled time to eat. Everything was scheduled to a T, and that was truly the way that I was able to balance. And then there were moments when I would become off-centered, but I had really what I call my personal board of directors, my trio director, and other people who would see me struggling, and they would just reel me right back in and say, "You look like something is going wrong, and what can we do to pull you back in?" And so I'm just so grateful for that support that I received.
Thank you. So, Dr. Wilson, your response leads us into our next question, which is one of my favorite questions. Who or what did you all see as your support and your community through college and after? Like, so even for Dr. Wilson and Carol, like how are you still connected to that community? Do you still have that support from those individuals?
So I'm happy to jump in again here. My trio family was absolutely critical. And so Francis Nelson was my trio student support services director. But I also still have my Upward Bound director, who was Mr. Terrence Carter. I have Brenda Bradley Filson, who was my overall trio director in that space. There were other people like Miss Cassandra and Miss Rachel and Brent Matros. And, I remember all of these people vividly because they literally had worked with me from middle school all the way through my undergrad experience. And these are people who always showed up for me. I remember having a flat tire and not knowing how to change a tire even freshman year. And Mr. Brent Matros rushed over from his office to come change my tire for me. They were truly my family and pushed me through school. These are the same people who showed up to my graduation and cheered for me like family on the day when I completed my undergraduate degree. These are the same people who cheered for me through my master's degrees and through my doctorate. They always show up. A few of them have passed on. The majority of them are still with us, and they are absolutely like family to me. In addition to my trio family, I cultivated really incredible relationships with faculty members on campus as well. And so there are plenty of faculty members, plenty of staff members, people in the financial aid office who I pestered all the time about resources. There were additional relationships in the community that I was able to foster as well through my work with the school district. But these are folks who, without them, I wouldn't be here today. So I'm really grateful for that.
I can go. I have 4 people or 4 groups, and it's my family, my friends, the Office of Multicultural Affairs, and Trio that have helped me through everything. They've seen me cry, they've seen me happy, they've seen the whole 4 years. And without them, I don't know how I would get it, how I would even get my degree. The Trio office, I've pretty much been in both of them, Savannah and Statesboro. And when I transferred, I was scared that it was going to be the same, but they are amazing. The students, the faculty, and staff it just feels like I'm meant to be there with them. And they've helped me through studying, through finding resources, jobs, everything.
I would say in my case, my support, it was really my family, particularly my sister, Kathy Cox Brakefield. She and I lived together when she was in law school and I was an undergrad. We are the only two siblings, so we were always close anyway. So we lived together, and our parents didn't have a lot of money for us, but they fed us. So my mom and kept our freezer filled and took care of us in that way. I will have to say that, and maybe it was just the era when I was in college, or maybe it was but I cultivated relationships with a couple of faculty, my honors advisor, who actually more questioned why I was there based upon how I'd grown up and what a great thing he thought it was growing up on a farm, and and a couple of other faculty. But to be honest, I didn't see those relationships. And I think maybe as we have learned more in higher ed about the things that students need, maybe we've gotten better at it. So that's a great thing.
I would agree. Next, how has being a first generation student, how has that impacted your life and like within college and beyond college? How has that impacted you? Is it something that you all still think about as you go through your day to day?
I would say for myself, like I had said before, I didn't ever really think about that concept of first gen. So, I really can't say that it has, other than the fact that my parents were always very proud of my sister and me because we had made it to and through college, but it wasn't necessarily because we were first gen. It was just that we have been able to do that. So.
And I'm happy to jump in here as well. So I will tell you that what it has taught me is that anything is possible, anything is achievable if you believe in yourself and if you surround yourself with the appropriate network as you navigate life. It has taught me the power of never giving up. I think about every step of my journey. I always tell people that I did not know what a master's degree was until my senior year of undergrad. And I remember being in class and hearing someone say that they were going to graduate school and getting a master's degree. And I walked over and I said, what exactly are you talking about? What's a master's degree? I literally had no idea. And so I think about how fortunate I've been and how being a first generation student has always fostered this spirit of curiosity. Always want to know the next thing. I'm always interested in being a lifelong learner. Because I think about the journey. Had I not asked the questions, had I not been curious along the way, I would not be sitting here before you today. And so that's really it for me.
So my thing is, if you're curious, go ahead and search it. Just have curiosity. Yes, I was curious about college. I've always known I wanted to go, but I couldn't. If I asked my parents, hey, how is this? How is that? They don't know. I have to go find it myself and see how it is. If not, I'm always going to be curious. Sorry. I feel like it's motivated me to actually go for it, ask questions, and grow from it. Not just, I have to be prepared because I'm a planner just like you, and I have anxiety sometimes. But college is something I just had to go for it. I just had to go for it. And I'm happy I did because it's paying off.
Thank you. So my next question is, what keeps you all motivated to like either keep serving students, to keep just going toward your goals? Like what keeps you motivated? What keeps you like, this, I got to keep going because of this?
As a baby boomer, right now, what keeps me motivated is retirement. But I would say that while I was in college, what motivated me was to get my degree and to get a job and to be able to support myself. And so that was my motivation.
So my motivation is my mom's goal, since she couldn't graduate, was for all her daughters to graduate. And I'm the baby of all three. So I'm the last one. I have to graduate. That's what keeps me motivated. And seeing her having to work 3 jobs a day just to keep us in college and stuff was like, it made me realize that's not what I want in my life. A degree can get me way farther without having to get 3 jobs to get by.
And I think for me, I would say my family, my faith, the students that I have the opportunity to serve. In this capacity and the last few capacities, I've also had the pleasure of serving in, also the faculty and staff that I have the pleasure of serving as well. The community partners that I have the opportunity to work with. I reflect deeply on the sacrifices that many in my family and the people who were my own TRIO directors. And as a former TRIO director myself, for more than 6 years, I think about all the long evenings and the personal sacrifice and the conversations and the counseling. And so I feel like I have an obligation to give back and to serve those who come behind me. And so that's what keeps me motivated for sure.
So I know Karen and Dr. Wilson have already mentioned this, but I'll go ahead and ask. Did you all participate in any TRIO programs? And can you speak a little bit more to how TRIO has impacted your college career? Or if not TRIO, any organization that you were involved in that was really impactful to your college career?
It's interesting. I went back delving into my undergrad, and if there was a TRIO program on my campus, I have either forgotten or was not aware of it. So it was a resource that at that time was not available to me, or I didn't get enough information to know that it was there.
Yeah, and as I mentioned earlier, I spent my 5th grade year through the beginning of my 9th grade year as an educational talent search student through Ouachita Baptist University. And then I transitioned into an Upward Bound program. And then from there, as an undergraduate student, I was in TRIO Student Support Services. And then I was a McNair Scholar as well. These programs set the foundation for my entire career and my life beyond high school. And without those programs, and more specifically, the professionals who were employed by those programs who poured into me, I wouldn't sit before you today. And so it's one of the many reasons why I made an immediate investment back early on in my career to serve as a TRIO director, because I just wanted to give back and I wanted to cultivate a similar experience for the students who were coming behind me to make sure that they also had the same level of support and guidance to navigate. And so I just love that time in my career and always still feel connected back to it. I've had the pleasure of supervising the directors for TRIO in most capacities until here at Georgia Southern University. This is the first time in my professional career where I've not still had some oversight over TRIO. And so, yeah, TRIO is everything from my particular journey for sure.
So I participated in TRIO on the Savannah campus and on the Statesboro campus. And when I first joined, I was a freshman. And when I first joined, I didn't really have my college career planned. And when they sat down and asked me, what are my goals and what's my plan, I did not know. They took time out their day to sit down and write all my goals down. And when I look back at it, I'm a senior now. I look back and I can check off every goal because of them. And it just felt like an accomplishment.
Thank you all for that. So as a TRIO alum myself, and now as a director of TRIO, I truly believe in the hashtag TRIO works. I think Karen has demonstrated that, Dr. Wilson, and I know even with my own journey. So TRIO definitely works. My next question is, so what advice would you all give to a first generation student from the moment that he or she steps on campus? What advice would you all give?
So I'll jump in, and I would say to believe in yourself, and know that you deserve to be at the institution, to immerse yourself in the culture of the institution, and to get involved, and to do so early, and to do so consistently. But I would also say don't overload yourself, right? And that's a balance, and your mentors and folks in TRIO can help you identify and strike that balance for yourself. Identify your resources across campus, academic and otherwise, and then actually utilize those resources. Sometimes we know that they exist, and there's still some fear associated with actually taking part in those services and programs. And so actually engage, build relationships, cultivate that network while you're here, and understand the importance of that. Put your academic experience first. Think about what's to come beyond this space, right? We want you to not just survive and get a degree. We want you to thrive. And for me, that means getting this degree, but also being prepared for what comes after you leave Georgia Southern University. Think about graduate school if you haven't already. Be okay with changing your major if you pivot and recognize that what you're doing is not what's appropriate for you. Again, I started as a biology and chemistry double major. I used to say I wanted to be a dentist. And that was something that I had said the majority of my life. And then I got into these lab courses, and I was bored, to be honest with you. I had great grades. I just didn't have an interest in doing it anymore. And that was a really difficult realization for me, and also a really difficult conversation for me to have with my parents, who could understand doctor, lawyer, those things. But when I said I'm going to major in political science, and I'm not really sure what I want to do with that, and then it lent itself to working in education for the last 14 years. As you can imagine, that was an interesting conversation. Be super proactive, and think about your financial experience, right? Financial literacy is so important, and it's something that TRIO educates around. And it's something that you don't necessarily learn in K through 12 school, but I cannot stress enough the importance of learning about financial literacy and credit scores and making wise financial decisions, so that when you do leave here, you've left in a really good position, prepared for your future as well. And so there's lots of other things that I can say, but I'll stop there.
Karen, you go next.
Okay, so my advice would be ask questions. Like, I didn't ask questions, ask questions. There's always going to be somebody that knows an answer. There's always been somebody that was there before you, or is going through, or already went through the same experience that you're going through. Get involved all over campus. You will always find something that's going to interest you. Go on my GSU and read all of the organizations. There's always going to be something for everybody. Join TRIO. That's one of the biggest things. If you need scholarships, you need help, you just need to talk to somebody. You just need a mentor. They're going to have everything there for you. They have tutors, everything. They have workshops. If you don't know what you need, just ask. Just be like, hey, I'm so confused. And somebody will talk to you and help you. Make friends. That's one of the biggest things. That's going to be networking. What's another thing? Oh, and meet with your professors. I know COVID, we're all online right now, but please go to their office. They want to see our faces, or just do a Zoom call. They want to get to know us too, and it helps out afterwards when you need a letter of recommendation.
I think Karen has great advice directly from the source, and I would just say that wow, there's so many resources available on any of our campuses for students to take advantage of. And Karen, you probably may have thought this initially too. I think maybe the initial thought is, oh, well, I'm the only one that's in this, feels this way. But gosh, you're not alone. And so you don't have to be, a student doesn't have to be embarrassed thinking I'm the only one in this group when you're not. But I will say you guys will probably agree from perspective working with students that as thrilled, Karen, as you may be with what you have gotten, we get as good as we give as well, and that knowing that we're helping you to achieve your goals and check all those boxes that you have to check. So anybody who's involved in working with students, which on our campuses is everybody really, because student success is job one, is thrilled when we can reach out and work with students and help you to achieve your goals.
Absolutely, absolutely. Thank you so much. And so my final question for you all is, in both your academic and or professional careers, what has been the most rewarding part for you for being either a current first generation college student or a first generation graduate? And so for this question, let's start with Karen, and then we'll go to Dr. Wilson, and then end with Carol.
So, okay, my most rewarding part is probably that I did it. Well, hold on, I haven't even graduated, but that I'm almost there, that I finished, and that I was able to put everything that I was scared and like curious about into the past. And it's just, I'm almost finished. I'm a senior. It's surprising. It's surprising because I remember when I came in, I was scared. I had a lot of questions. I didn't know what I was going to have to do, if I was going to be able to do it. But I wanted to do it. It was one of my goals. And the most rewarding part is that I can tell my mom, hey, I did it. I can take care of you. Do you know what I'm saying? It's like, I can pick what job I want. I can make my side hustle. I can make my own business. And I don't have to work 3 jobs, just to make ends meet. And that's probably going to be one of the most rewarding things, is that I just break that generation. Yeah.
And I'm so proud of you. I know we just met on this call, but super proud of you. And I just feel all the feels as I hear you talk about your experience, because it was absolutely the same for me. I think the most rewarding part of the work that I have the opportunity to do is I always frame it as lifting as you climb, right? And so as I advance in my career, my job is to reach back and to bring other people along on this journey. And so I take a lot of pride in the ability to do that. I take a lot of pride in the ability to mentor students as well who are coming behind me, and people who are just in the field who are also first generation professionals, and work with them and to help them cultivate a spirit of excellence as they navigate, and a spirit of yes, I can, as I call it as well. Because sometimes, the journey doesn't end, right? Just because you got this degree. There are a lot of additional firsts that happen as a result of being a first generation college graduate. And so just making the road and the path a little easier for those who come behind me is the most rewarding part of my experience.
I agree. You kind of think about the pay it forward idea of the things that people did for your parents and you, and you move that forward. So I think that's rewarding, is when you're able to do that, and to pay it forward, and just the pride that particularly my father, made me cry, felt because his daughters were able to do what we did.
Thank you all so much for sharing your story with us today. This has been really great. Just hearing your different stories. And like I said, we really wanted to look at it from a generational perspective. So getting that and just really seeing, like I mentioned earlier, the similarities and just seeing how things like family is important. So thank you all so much. I know, like, again, as a first gen person, this is really a time for me to reflect on my own journey. And so to anyone that's watching that may be first gen, I hope that you were able to get something out of this. Or if you have, any questions or anything. So I know we don't have any questions right now in the chat, but please feel free to send in those questions because we are here to help in any way that we can. So before I wrap up, do any of our panelists have any final words to say?
I mean, just very quickly, one thing that I did not mention that I absolutely should mention is the importance of quality mentors along the journey, right? So aside from having your trio folks who have your back and support you along the way, you need a professional mentor. You also should, if at all possible, have a professional internship before you leave the university as well to set you up for success. And so make sure that you cultivate those experiences working with career services, working with other student services focused programs that may provide a mentor to you. If there is a first generation student out there listening to this and you don't have a mentor, come and find me in Marvin Pittman on the Statesboro campus, or come and find me in Burnett Hall on the Armstrong campus, and I would be happy to connect you to the appropriate mentor or serve as a mentor to you as well. Continue to believe in yourself and know that anything is possible.
And kind of along those same lines, and I think Karen, you mentioned this before too, and interchange with your faculty, and when you needed letter of recommendations and those kind of things. That if you're cultivating those relationships, students who work for me, 2-3 years ago, I still hear from if they're applying for med school or grad school or a job, and being able to have those people available for references and that sort of thing.
Karen, do you have anything you'd like to add?
I just want to say I'm happy I got on here because I learned a lot from both of y'all. So thank y'all.
Great. So actually, I did just get one question. If Dr. Wilson or Carol, would you all mind sharing some of your advice to first-gen professionals?
Carol, do you want to start?
I will say the advice that I always gave my students who work for me is that no matter what your job, pay attention, and I don't mean stalk people, but pay attention to what's going on around you. What are other people doing? Because I have found that there have been situations where when someone needs somebody to be able to step in, and you can step up and say, I'm familiar with that. Can I help out? That really makes a big difference in knowing that you've been engaged and that you're aware of what's happening around you, how things are working, and being able to step up sometimes and take a lead, and that goes a long way.
Yeah, and I would just add to that and say dream and dream big. And then work really hard and know that you can achieve anything that you desire. And some of the same advice around mentorship and kind of having your own personal board of directors and people who can check you and keep you on track as you navigate, that absolutely should still be a part of your professional experience as well. I think sometimes it's easy for people to assume that once you reach a certain level within an organizational structure, that you somehow don't need mentorship and guidance anymore. But I'm here to tell you, as somebody who reports to the president and sits on cabinet, one of the things that I'm most interested in is identifying mentors and continuing to build those relationships. I have amazing mentors. I wouldn't be here without them, but to continue to cultivate those relationships and identify new mentors along the way. And then also recognize that the rules are different sometimes when you're first generation or you possess certain marginalized identities. And so you can't do what you see everyone else doing. And so you keep working hard. If other people are distracted and doing something else, you don't pay any attention to that. You focus on your journey, your path, recognizing that it just might look different than those who are sitting next to you, or those who come before you, or even folks who are behind you as well. And so work really, really hard and just maintain amazing professional relationships, keep a mentor, reach out to folks, cultivate a career path for yourself as well. I remember getting my first job out of undergrad, and you're making more money than anyone in your family has made. You somehow think you've already made it, right? And in many ways you have. You're doing well. It's easy to stop in that place. Don't stop. Keep going, keep pushing, keep striving for better. And again, the sky's the limit.
One other point that I thought of, when Dr. Wilson, when you were speaking, you were talking earlier about changing your major. I didn't change my major, but Karen, it's okay after you graduate if you change your career path. I thought I knew exactly where I was going and what I was going to do, and within a year or so of graduating, I got where I thought I wanted to be, and I hated it. And so that was hard because I had to sort of regroup and rethink and look at the things that I'd done in the last year that I liked perhaps about my job, and find a new direction. And it worked well. It worked for me, but it's okay. It's okay. But that was hard for me to admit to myself, I guess.
Thank you all so much for just really I really appreciate you all coming out and just sharing this great advice and just sharing your stories with us. This has been so great. And so we are at the end of our time for today. So it's been really great listening to you all. I really hope to all of our viewers, you all have enjoyed hearing our panelists today. Thank you all for joining us. As we are wrapping up, I would just like to thank the TRIO staff across all campuses for putting things together for this week to celebrate First Gen Day in our celebration. That's been great. Also, thank you to the Office of University Marketing and Communications for helping us with our live stream today and getting everything set up with that. This was very new for me, so thank you all for that. As a reminder to our first gen faculty and staff on campus, you all are encouraged to wear your I am first or your first gen buttons this week. If you do not have one, please reach out to your campus's TRIO programs and we'll try to get one to you as soon as possible. Yes, I have mine on. Yes. So please wear your buttons this week. Also, as a reminder, on Wednesday, you all are encouraged to wear your alma mater apparel and post about it on Facebook. As you post throughout the week, please be sure to use the hashtag celebrate first gen or hashtag GS first gen, and please be sure to tag our departments. And for those of you viewing on Facebook, we'll put our departmental tags in the comments. Also, later on this week, if you did pre-order a First Gen Proud t-shirt, those will be available for pickup later on this week. So please check your emails for that. Again, thank you all for joining us today, and that is all. You all have a great rest of your day. Bye.